So who does all this make sense of? The writer is giving this big myth. Obviously, the whore is killed, Babylon is killed, Rome is destroyed, all the wealthy people are destroyed, all the kings of the earth are destroyed by the angels and by Jesus coming down. And then the setting up of the new Jerusalem with this gold and beautiful, and there's no night or day there because God is its light, and everybody lives happily ever after. But what is the kind of situation that this speaks to? We're going to go back to the beginning of Revelation now. Look at chapter 2. These are then the letters. We know it was written by a guy named John. He says he was imprisoned on the Isle of Patmos in the Mediterranean when he wrote this. And then he circulates it around. And he starts off with these 7 letters to 7 churches. To the angel of the church in Ephesus. Ephesus. We've seen Ephesus, haven't we? One of Pseudo-Paul's letters may have been addressed to Ephesus. Paul apparently did found a church in Ephesus, and it was one of his bigger churches, it seems like. He spent years there. These are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks among the 7 golden lampstands. I know your works, your toil, and your patient endurance. I know that you cannot tolerate evildoers. You have tested those who claim to be apostles, but are not, and have found them to be false. So there's false apostles running around. I also know that you are enduring patiently and bearing up for the sake of my name, and that you have not grown weary. But I have this against you. See, some of the letters are mainly letters of praise to the churches, and some of them are scolding letters. So it's interesting to see, what does he scold people for, and what does he praise them for? Remember then from what you have fallen. Repent. So this is a backslid church, he thinks. Do the works you did at first. If not, I will come to you and remove your lampstand from its place unless you repent. Yet this is to your credit. You hate the works of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. Well, we don't really know anything about the Nicolaitans, so that doesn't tell us much. Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. To everyone who conquers, I will give permission to eat from the tree of life that is in the paradise of God. And then he goes on to another church. So there's false apostles. But then look at 2:9. I know your affliction and your poverty, even though you are rich. I know the slander on the part of those who say that they are Jews, but are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. So there's this poverty. He's praising poverty. He talks about people who are say they're Jews, but they're not. 2:13. I know where you are living. This is to Pergamum, which happened to be a huge site of the imperial cult, the cult to the emperor. In fact, you can go there now. I'm going to be there in June. Aren't you jealous? And you can go to the top of this mountain, the Acropolis in Pergamum, and the Austrian archaeologists are rebuilding all these temples to Trajan and Hadrian on the top of this hill. Of course, Trajan and Hadrian are after he wrote this, but there was still a big emperor cult there. I know where you are living, where Satan's throne is. Well, maybe that's a reference to the emperor cult itself. You are holding fast to my name. You did not deny your faith in me, even in the days of Antipas, my witness. I have some things against you. You have some, well, I'm running out of time, but let me tell you what basically he really doesn't like. He doesn't like a woman named, he calls Jezebel, who is one of the prophets in one of the churches. He doesn't like rich people. He says stuff about idolatry, which makes it sound like he doesn't like people who are eating meat sacrificed to idols. We don't think there were any of these churches that were actually practicing pagan idolatry. What's probably going on is he knows that there are some Christians who are eating meat sacrificed to idols, and he calls that idolatry. Now let's think about which churches are in this area of Western Asia Minor that have women as leaders in them. They've been told by their apostle that it's okay to eat meat sacrificed to idols. And some of them are not that poor, like there seem to be people in Corinth who seem to be fairly well off. Maybe this guy, this is just a theory, but I think it's fun to think about, maybe he's actually writing to Paul's churches precisely because he thinks they're too comfortable with Roman rule. And he wants to make them uncomfortable with Roman rule in order to turn them against Rome and to convert him to his own vision about this anti-Roman version of the gospel. And that's why he constructs, as I said, if you're troubled, if you feel like you're oppressed, you're supposed to be comforted by this text. But if you're too comfortable with the Pax Romanum, you're supposed to be made uncomfortable by the text and get on the right side. On Wednesday, we'll talk about some texts that may have been more comfortable with Roman rule.